Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for attending today on a Friday afternoon. Hopefully, we can have an interesting discussion here that will give you guys some insights into building solar. The topic today is building solar in Western Canada, but I think, a lot of we're going to discuss are going to apply, for projects that you could build really anywhere. So, so once again, thank you very much for joining this webinar today. This is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. In the past, our webinars have been really focused on a product specifically, whereas here we are talking about building, bigger ground mount solar in Western Canada, but we would like to have more of an open discussion. So, with that in mind, everybody has the ability to put their cameras on and unmute to participate in the discussion as we go. We would like you to keep your mics on mute, as we go through when you're not talking. Once, like I said, once you do have a question, you just got to put your hand up. There's some little icons here, and we'll be sure to take your questions, or if you have something to add, you could jump in and discuss. We really want to keep this as free flowing conversation, for the next hour as much as possible. To help me or to aid us in the discussion, today I've invited a couple of gentlemen that I know very well that have built a lot of solar in Western Canada alongside polar racking. We have Arash Yazdani from PRI Engineering. He's the Director of Engineering Services. And I'll let him introduce himself and PRI Engineering, the company, and David DeBruin, who's the CFO of AltaPro, but very, very involved in all the operations of AltaPro, especially on the solar side. So with that, I'll let Arash introduce himself and a little bit about PRI Engineering.
All right, thanks a lot, Vishal. First and foremost, thanks a lot to Polar Racking and Vishal Lala for getting this awesome conversation together. He asked me to be a part of this, and definitely extremely excited, especially with the momentum that we are seeing in Western Canada with the renewable energy industry. My name is Arash Yazdani. I'm sure there's lots of you that have never met me. Hopefully one day maybe we will be able to cross paths. I'm a geotechnical engineer. I've been practicing geotechnical engineering in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean for over 10 years now. I focus on the design of foundations for solar mounting systems. PRI Engineering consists of over 10 professionals. We've got over 5 professional engineers, technicians, technologists, and there's over 100 years of combined experience in the solar industry within PRI Engineering, with about 1.5 gigawatts of foundation design or racking structure design work. We've got a pretty diverse team, and everyone kind of plays an integral part in the grand scheme of things, and that's kind of part of our multidisciplinary approach of solar foundation design, which obviously starts and focuses with geotechnical engineering, but stems to a lot of other types of engineering as well.
Great. I believe you're out in Western Canada right now testing some sites.
Yeah, we're actively working on some projects right now in Western Canada, specifically in Alberta at the moment. We're just trying to get as much information, fast track as many pile designs before the real Canadian winter really sets in. And, it's always a fun time of year in the geotechnical world, designing piles before Christmas. So we're working on one project right now, and, have about 4 or 5 that we're trying to complete before the end of the year.
And how many megawatts or kilowatts or megawatts would you say you're working on now till the end of the year?
Somewhere in the ballpark of about 250 to 300 megawatts.
Okay. Yeah, no, I knew it was big. I didn't realize it was that big. So yeah, that more evidence that there's a lot going on in Western Canada right now. David, I'll turn it on to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about AltaPro?
For sure, yeah. And just let me know if the mic is good level here. And obviously, thanks for the introduction, Vishal, and the opportunity on the webinar today. So, brief introduction on AltaPro. We're a design build electrical contractor by nature. Been in business for over 30 years. With deep roots in design build, and in the last 5 years, have really pivoted on the renewable energy side. Like Vishal has said, I am the CFO of the company, but a very large role in the renewable side. And I think it really has also a huge play on how things look financially for clients. And you really have to understand how the project performs financially to get it from an EPC level and make sure you get value for the client. A little bit about myself. So I am a master electrician as well. So, when we go through and design these systems on the electrical standpoint, we really look at it from a constructability standpoint to make sure that these designs actually, make sense and have a very good labor portion tied to them as well. It's very important in the design to make sure you can build it fast. It's not just all about component selection. You have to make sure the whole package fits together. So that's a little bit about my background, on the very technical side of the electrical engineering. And AltaPro is, very broad base, but, our renewable sector is definitely heating up. I know there was some mention to the industry, and it definitely has some great vibes right now, and it is, it's expanding rapidly. So it's a fun industry to be in right now.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. I mean, the one thing I do know about you is you're very detailed in the project. So I didn't want that CFO title to throw anyone off, because if anyone knows how the nuts and bolts work and how the financing works, all the way up to the financing, you definitely have a very great appreciation for that. So yeah, welcome you to the webinar today, and hoping to learn more from your experience. So I'll tell you a little bit about polar racking. First of all, myself, my name is Vishal. Lala. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Polar Racking. We've been in business since 2009. We are a Canadian company, started in Ontario. However, we've worked in almost all the provinces now in Canada, and finally this year we'll have our first projects going up in the Northwest Territories. We obviously do a lot of racking in the US and the Caribbean as well. So we offer rooftop, ground mounted carport racking systems. We have a full team of mechanical, structural, geotechnical engineers in-house. To date, we've done about 300 megawatts worth of projects, and we have a pretty huge pipeline of projects coming up. Tailwinds for solar, like said David, are favorable on both sides of the border, and especially today. Being a Canadian company, I'm always most excited about the Canadian projects, and another reason why I get very excited when I hear about all the activity happening out west right now. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about our product before we jumped into the discussion. It is custom-made solution for your project, and so what does that mean? That means we can customize the tilt angle, the foundation type, and really optimize our design for the layout of your site, which ultimately ends up saving you money in steel, and our design ultimately should result in significant assembly and construction savings, basically. We do have integrated bonding. In some of our products, pre-populated, you're able to pre-populate your modules as you're building. And we are UL certified for Canada, which is the ULC or DC103. We're currently going through the LTR certification as well, and we have the UL2703 certification in the US. So just to pick up on some of the previous points, again, our product is a very robust product. So what does that mean? A lot of other products that you'll see in the market tend to go with much lighter main structural beams, and then they throw a lot of bracing on to make up for that, which ultimately results in a lot of time, a lot of extra time on site to put together. And when you're going through your site and doing ongoing O&M, that you really feel the effect of having all those extra parts and extra fasteners. So our product does come with a 20-year limited warranty as well. So again, we use it is galvanized steel construction. We generally use G90 here in Canada. We do a lot of work in the Caribbean as well, where we offer G210 and up to G235. Stainless steel fasteners and magnet coated fasteners, depending on where you are. Integrated bonding. With our current wind tunnel study, we can go as low as 5 degrees and as high as 60 degrees. The rack is configured. Another thing that makes Polar's solution a little bit different than our competitors is that we let you or PRI engineering or your project determine what foundation type you should be using. So there are a lot of guys out there that are the helical pile guys or the ground screw guys or the driven guys. Like we've done helical piles, driven piles, ground screws, and ballasted solutions. Actually, just in Alberta in the last year, we've done all of those different types, or in the last couple of years, we've done all of those different types. So we really try to make sure that we're putting forth the best solution for your site. And then the other point I'd like to bring up is we do offer 2 high in portrait or 3 high in portrait or 4 in landscape, 4 in landscape or 6 in landscape. And that's something new that we've started offering this year because we just got a new wind tunnel study done through our WDI. So again, depending on your site conditions, we'll work with you to optimize your layout and come up with a solution that makes the most sense in terms of constructability and production, and getting it in the ground. So just the last slide about Polar before we start a discussion. As I said, the focus on this is big solar, and big solar tends to be in the ground, but we do offer flat rooftop ballast system, flush mount system, a system for small ground mounts that we sell through Franken Solar and eCall, which are our 2 distributors in Canada. PRU, which is the focus of our discussion today, and this year we've started with carports. So we've done a lot of carports in the US right now. We're getting the first few carports going here in Canada, hopefully here in the next couple of months as well. So pretty extensive offering of carports. We've taken a different approach to our carports. So if you go on our website and see some of our pictures, you'll see, again, very robust product and very simple to assemble. So please check it out. So that leads us into the main purpose of our topic today, which is a discussion about building solar in Western Canada. And we definitely we'll definitely touch on a few different topics, which is building solar above the ground, building solar below the ground, single axis tracker versus fixed. But I will start off by asking, I apologize about this, I will start off with David and throw the question out there. What makes Western Canada such a great market for solar right now?
For sure. I think it really comes down to a couple of main things. We have a really good access to sun here. Number one, you got to have that. And we do in Alberta. We have a wide range of sun hours that goes across the province, and in Alberta specifically, and in BC, there's a lot of difference in sun hours, but a the majority of Western Canada has great access to the resource, and at the end of the day, it has to make sense financially, and that's the number one driver, is that we do have that resource, which is good. Another thing specifically, I guess, in the Alberta market, in our area where I am situated, I think it really comes down to the mix of our deregulated and regulated market, and it'll come down to the financial benefit for the developer. It creates some unique financing structures coming in, and at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the energy and commodity cost. And Alberta specifically has a very good market to allow developers to come in with a good solution, low cost energy creation, and that's why it's I think on such a large upswing is the pricing in solar energy generation has come down to the point where it is very competitive, and if not more than our traditional sources. So that's why I see it as a huge and great market for solar in Western Canada.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing so much development there. We're getting contacted from lots of local developers in Alberta, but we're starting to see a lot of people coming from, well, obviously Eastern Canada, but European developers and US developers take an interest in projects in Western Canada, specifically Alberta, more than some of the other provinces, but Saskatchewan has been on the radar a little bit as well from some of the developers out east also. So do you have any experience in some of the other markets like Saskatchewan or BC?
Yeah, Alberta is our primary focus, and we do look at Saskatchewan as well. And to me, it's the barrier to entry that's creating, this the shift for renewables in Western Canada. If you have a regulatory, body that's, you play by their rules, and it makes it a little inhibitive for a developer to come in and bring on a generation asset. So, a little more stringent and robust areas like Saskatchewan and BC. Not to say it's not a good areas, but Alberta definitely, if you can come to the Alberta system operator with a great project and a great solution to the grid problems, it's fair game, fair market. And that's why it's so great here is the open market advantage. Very, very good sun hours in Saskatchewan as well. You can see, I'm sure many of us have seen that map of, what's yellow and blue and, where the sun hours are. So Saskatchewan, in terms of a province, definitely has I'd say a greater resource, but I think it comes down to being able to get these projects going and making sure you have fast power on your side to allow you to get into these rounds of projects. And same thing with BC.
Right. I appreciate that. And I guess I'll turn this one over to Arash. What makes building in Western Canada unique as opposed to some of the projects that you've worked on in Eastern Canada or even in the US right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Obviously, the opportunity in Western Canada is unique, as David very, very well kind of summarized. The challenge, there is some significant challenges. I shouldn't say significant. There is some challenges that can be worked through. Each province in Western Canada really does provide its unique characteristics that kind of force us to kind of think about design a little bit differently when it comes to foundations and racking systems. So when we start at the east and we start in Manitoba, looking at it from a geotechnical standpoint, first and foremost, you've got the Canadian Shield east flank of Manitoba, which means a lot of hard rock. So that could be some challenging terrain, some challenging topography to navigate with racking systems. But then as you work your way west from the Canadian Shield, you get more into the true prairies, which is flat. And, as David noted, is really where the large sun resource lies. So there's a lot of opportunities there from that standpoint. Flat land is easier land to develop from a racking standpoint, from a construction standpoint. And the prairies do seem to be a little less variable than what I'm used to here in southern Ontario from a geology standpoint. And as we work our way further west, Saskatchewan obviously is fully pretty much prairies, so very uniform from that standpoint. As we do work our way into the prairies, obviously with there being less trees, obstructions, buildings, hills, that type of topographic features, you got higher wind speeds. With higher wind speeds, there's maybe less concerns about snow accumulation because you're getting snow sweeping. But at the same time, we're in Canada. We're in the north, so it's not unlikely that you could get dumped with 1 meter of snow at any given time. Maybe 1 meter is a little extreme. I have seen. I'm sure other Canadians in the conversation here have seen meters of snow. So it's you gotta, because of those heavy environmental loads, is the point I'm trying to make, is you do need to have a nice, robust, well thought out engineered system that is going to be capable of withstanding these pretty harsh conditions over a 20, 25 plus year period. Working our way west, obviously the southeast, where there's a lot of action right now in Alberta. That's prairies. Once again, that goes back to the flat sun resources that Dave talked about. As we work our way closer to the mountains, closer to the Rockies, the terrain all of a sudden gets closer to the Canadian Shield again, and it's a much tougher terrain to build on. And once again, that's why we're seeing a lot of the majority of the projects in the prairies, in the flat-lying areas of Western Canada, where the sun shines. There's very minimal obstructions, and it's easy to build on. Working your way out to BC. Once again, BC's got it's very unique in its kind of it's in environmental conditions and climatic conditions. In the south, you don't have that much frost. Frost isn't something we talked about. I mentioned, but frost uplift is obviously a very, very large concern for foundation design in a northern environment. But in BC, in the south, frost isn't that deep. But as you work your way north, frost picks up. You get an increase of frost depth, and more importantly, we can get huge, huge, huge snow loads. So snow loads, obviously, that might affect more of Vishal's business on the racking side, less on the foundations. But at the end of the day, the racking system bears on the foundation, so it's all interconnected. And that's the big thing here, is you got a lot of really, really harsh environmental conditions that need to be considered during design, and you can't assume that one is more important than the other, or one takes precedent over the other. They need to all be looked at holistically in a uniform fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my next question, I'm going to swap the next two questions and let you keep going a little bit, Arash, because I think it leads in probably very well to what is the impact of frost on your design, and I'll preface this by saying that I've been in the solar industry since 2009. We started as a rooftop company, but in those early days in Ontario, there were a lot of sites built in Ontario with engineers from California and from Germany coming in and designing the foundations and doing what they've always done. And we saw a lot of those projects, frankly, come out of the ground. And the program in Ontario was probably one of the richest programs ever. So even though these sites cost millions and millions of dollars to fix, people probably still made a little bit of money. But I know that the situation in Western Canada doesn't necessarily allow for that, or anywhere anymore allow for that. So I know frost had a huge impact on those early mistakes that happened here. What do you look at when you're looking at building in Western Canada? And let's talk about obviously the southern Alberta, where a lot of stuff is being built. But I just mentioned that at the top, we're doing a project. Actually, it's in Whitehorse now. I come back and people talk about permafrost and things like that up there. Like, what do you look at when you look at one of these projects? So.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I mean, we'll start with permafrost. It's a very unique subsurface condition that obviously, you only see in certain parts of the world, Canada and Russia being predominantly, and, some of the Scandinavian nations. So there's not a lot of countries and not a lot of engineers out there with the experience on that front. And one of the challenges with permafrost is there's things called discontinuous permafrost. And what that means is there's layers in the ground that are frozen, but they've got unfrozen layers within them. So, water can move within those bands of frozen material. And, frost uplift or frost add freeze is the main concern when we're dealing with frost. And ultimately, that is the expansion of water in the pores of the soil. So, if you've got just cold temperatures, but no water and non-frost susceptible soils, you're not as bad. But when you've got cold temperatures, which we always know we have in Canada, and you mix the availability of water and frost susceptible soils, that's when frost becomes a big concern. So that's what we're looking at when we, analyze sites, when we analyze projects, is we're looking at all these considerations, because if you can eliminate one of those three conditions, and once again, we're in Canada, so it's unfortunately not going to become warmer probably anytime soon. We're going to have to deal with frost. So that's what we look at is looking at the site-specific conditions. It is extremely important to assess the site from a frost susceptibility standpoint. Some sites will be more frost susceptible than others, and getting a good grasp and understanding of frost will allow you to, have a successful built project in Western Canada. In a lot of cases, it also does come back to the racking system. Some racking systems are going to have a higher tolerance to movement versus others. If you've got a higher tolerance in your racking system to movement, you may be able to resist a little bit higher frost uplift load than others. Those are all things that have got to be considered when we're doing the design. And obviously, when we go, we at PRI, we work with a number of different racking companies. Polar definitely being one of the ones we're more familiar with. And one of the things about Polar system is that there is a lot of adjustability and ability to accommodate that movement. The other big thing we're looking at is, I did talk about earlier when I was talking about the different regions in Western Canada and how the environmental conditions affect the design. We did talk about the prairies being a little bit more on the uniform side, especially when I compare it to what's back home for me, Southern Ontario. The soils are uniform, and therefore it's fair to assume that the foundations will react similarly. And what I mean by that is we're okay with movement. Anybody that tells you your foundation isn't going to move is unfortunately lying to you. Every foundation will move to some degree, whether it's even just 1 or 2 millimeters or maybe up to 5 to 10 millimeters. But if we can properly assess the site and confirm it's uniform, and we're able to confirm that if there is any frost heave or frost uplift, the system is able to act uniformly. When things are acting uniformly on a racking system, you're not exposing that racking system to additional stress, which means that those members are going to last longer. Those modules aren't going to crack. Those modules aren't going to get damaged. And ultimately, that's what we got to worry about when we're designing foundations for racking systems. We need to make sure that we protect the developer's investment in those modules, because at the end of the day, those modules are what convert all that solar energy potential that David was talking about in the prairies to energy, which is what, is the end return for all these projects, which is why they get built. So,
right.
we're looking at frost, and we need to consider. We're always considering how do we protect those modules when we're designing those foundations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just to pick up on that, I know we've been working on some projects recently where, we've been traditionally heavy into helical piles, but you're starting to see areas now in Western Canada where driven piles work as well, right?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, we're seeing a lot of what are called glacial till deposits. Anybody that's gotten to explore the parks of Alberta maybe is familiar with the Columbian ice field. That's one of the most active ice fields that is regularly visited by humans. So, this whole area has been affected by glaciation, and if you could picture, a kilometer of ice compressing soil, it makes it really dense. And if we find those really dense pockets of soil, we're finding that a driven pile works great. But, we got to have a good understanding of the underground soil deposits of the site to understand how we can design around it. So that's why it's really important to not only do a detailed geotechnical investigation, but also you need to understand what depositions can accommodate which foundation types the best. That's one of the reasons that been so successful with working with Polar is because, as Vishal said at the onset of this conversation, he lets the ground do the talking, and I like to think that my influence has something to do with that. We've gotten to know each other for a couple of years, but ultimately you need to let the ground do the talking. And a lot of people, there's a lot of designers out there. You were talking about Californians and Europeans. They're used to non-glaciated soil deposits, and glaciated soil deposits are extremely unique, and they do need to be looked at from a little bit of a different lens compared to non-glacier soil deposits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll turn the next question over to David to start. How does the choice of racking impact your overall EPC costs?
The big thing for me when I look at it is the labor portion. Don't get me wrong, racking definitely is a large component cost of the overall picture and the EPC price, but labor drives a lot of the bus here on the decisions. You can't turn a blind eye to how a rack goes together. Can it be prefabbed, and what the DC cabling management looks like? In Canada, we have a very unique climate. We have huge swings like Vishal and Arash are talking about, from weather from heavy snowfalls to frost conditions. This all adds up to potentially ice hanging off wires and how robust that racking system is. You don't want to have it that you've say got a racking system that doesn't incorporate some level of DC cable management, and you get a heavy snow and it's pulling on some wires, and you don't want to be relying on zip ties and cable clips for absolutely everything. You need some beef there in the structure. Racking choice, and even talking about the frost and what makes it unique in Canada. From a construction standpoint, we actually have a pretty small window of construction to get that labor portion in check. We have built projects in the dead of winter with some heavy snowfall, but obviously it increases the labor component. If you're moving around meters of snow just to clear the site to work on it, as a developer, you're just going to wait till the spring, right? So what makes it unique in Canada and racking the overall EPC costs is you got to get that right on the construction schedule. That comes into trenching as well. You're not going to be trenching in the frost. You're going to wait till the spring. So really understanding, the geology of the site and the weather patterns that you're going to see there does play a role in your overall EPC cost. I know very often, echoing what Vishal was talking about, developers from, let's say, Europe coming in and having a preconceived notion of this is the foundation that we have done here, and we're going to try to push that on this site. You can't do that in Canada. You really have to listen to the geology of the site and build off from there. I know Arash has spoken about that as well, but it is paramount. You really have to look at the site and let it dictate what you're going to do for the foundation, or you'll forever regret your decision from an EPC standpoint.
Right.
For us, it's also the tolerance. I know it was touched on here before, but that's a huge win. If you got a rack that, let's say this thing blows together really quickly, but it doesn't have any tolerance, I mean, you're asking for problems, because not everything is going to be perfect. You have undulations in the ground profile, and if your rack can accommodate some level of tolerance, you're going to be dealing with a lot tighter tolerance for power refusals, or let's say you have to get that driven or helical power just right to make sure that rack fits on there without having any negative effects. So tolerance to me is a big thing in the EPC cost when you look at it. I know one thing I like to focus on is it's not always about the cost, and from a financial perspective, when we look at these projects overall, I would much rather have a fixed material cost than labor, because labor is very variable, and in construction it's a huge risk. Labor is always the largest risk in all the projects that we look at, and how do we mitigate that? Whether it's by design, we optimize, or there's a lot of other methods, but to me, labor is the biggest thing that racking can affect on the overall EPC cost.
Right. No, yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, just to throw in a little plug for myself, it's these types of discussions that I have with guys like you, David, and Arash, from the beginning, that really help us as a racking company develop the features or the solutions that we need. So yeah, no, this is great feedback, and good for people that haven't built a lot to definitely hear. And when you talk about tolerance, I look at the picture in the background, and I know that that site, which is I think about 3.3 megawatts that we built in Calgary, or you built in Calgary, and we supplied the foundations and the racking for, and Arash worked on the design for. We ran into some fill that we were not made aware of beforehand, and didn't come up in our initial investigation. And I know the tolerance really came into play big time on that site. So.
Oh yeah. No, I like the picture shows. It looks really well presented, and a lot of racking ate up a lot of tolerance, and it really even plays into shading long term. If you look at how much project's going to lose on shading losses if the racking is all over the map, and if you didn't set it right, and all those things play into effect long term. These are long term assets. You got to make sure you do it right the first time. I also do want to talk about some other things that racking has a large play in the EPC cost is the availability to adjust your design to different module configurations on the tables. I see a lot of time guys walk in and they say, "Oh, I want this size of table," and they just want to run with it, and they got a preconceived notion of that. But you can't approach optimizing a site with that mindset. It really has to be driven from the DC strings. You really want to find out how many modules you're connecting together, and then optimize the rack to pair with that and complement it. You don't want to do it backwards and say, "Oh, we're going to make the shape of the site, and then we're going to cable it," and all of a sudden you have this big labor component that I was talking about taking conductors from one row to the next to share strings. And this might be getting in the technical portion of it, but I really want to shed some light on, if you don't optimize your wiring to fit your racking, there are huge swings you can see on the EPC cost. And having the right racking solution and partner to help you optimize the table sizes and foundation, and even foundation count, plays a massive part in the cost.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, so the wiring, when we're designing a system, like oftentimes we will, especially working with you and others, people will tell us the string size, and we'll try to, or we'll typically, adjust the table size to the string, but we don't always realize the huge impact that has on cost. So appreciate you shedding light on that for sure. Oftentimes we get caught in our bubble, right? One more topic I want to talk about with you guys is single axis tracker versus fixed. And I'll preface this by saying currently Polar doesn't sell a single axis tracker. We only sell a fixed solution. Part of that is because I haven't been to a single axis tracker site where all the tables are facing in the same direction. So it makes me a little bit nervous. We are learning a lot from what others have done right and wrong, and one day it is quite possible that we'll have one. But as it stands today, typically as we're supplying product into some harsher environments, the fix seems to work. And for people that are considering owning these long-term assets, as you said, and looking at real O&M costs, we'll still have a pretty great market with our fixed product. But really interested in hearing your opinion about that and some of the different design considerations for people that would be considering the other option, or the option of going with single axis tracker as well. So then I'd open that up to you, and I'll let David or Arash, I'll let David start since he's not on mute yet. So
thanks. This is definitely an interesting topic, and a lot of opinions vary on this one. For me, I really do think single axis tracker has a place in solar in the world, and as we develop our global energy creation. But Canada, you need to very carefully consider the options for a single axis tracker. We've talked about the environment and the climate quite a bit. Down south we have very, very high wind. We have very high snow up north. There's a lot to consider there. A lot of these systems that have been manufactured are from areas that are not accustomed to these weather conditions. So, I'd preface not say that that is bad, but don't be fooled that some of these manufacturers have not fully understood the climate that is in this in Western Canada and made sure that the products match the area that they're going to be installed in. From a financial standpoint, to me, it comes down to dollars and cents. As a developer or providing an EPC cost to someone who would like to develop a site, it should come down to the financial feasibility. And there's a huge risk and reward with single axis trackers. I mean, yes, you do get some better production around the shoulders, and in some parts of Alberta it works great. But in other parts, you should really be cautious about it, because you're probably going to miss out on a lot of production due to stow mode, snow days. A lot of these systems, they can't handle these large swings in weather, and they end up going to safe mode. Obviously, there's a lot to dive into there. But for me,
right.
I'd say the most misconception that I see is people think that large, broad shoulder, and you hear, this thing's going to produce 30% more energy. As you go more north in Western Canada, those gains diminish, because if you look at the high sun hours at noon, when your module's flat on a single axis tracker way up north, the sun angle is very, very low. So if you don't have that tilt like you would on a single axis, you may have very broad shoulders on your overall generation, but there's a huge haircut in your peak generation that you would otherwise be missing. And this changes all through Alberta, from southern Alberta to northern Alberta. And I really do think that there is a line of, if you're further up here in Western Canada, you probably should not be doing a single axis tracker due to the generation and, the added cost alone. I think one of the values that we see, probably the most paramount, is you have to look at it from a financial pro forma standpoint. Nothing about, on the construction end, we're going to build it for this cost. You really got to take everything into account. Every single axis tracker and fixed tilt has a specific amount of O&M dollars you're going to spend on that thing for the full life cycle of the system. And with single axis trackers, there's definitely going to be an increase. I mean, you have moving parts, you have motors, you have added electronics and sensors. Not to say these things are all bad, and I really do think single axis is a great solution, but you really need to look at the added generation that you're going to get and the dollar amount you're going to see in each market. and if that's worth the risk, because it is there, and I really do think, my personal standpoint is, if you're going more north than Red Deer, I guess, say on that line, I would be of the opinion I'd be for sure in a fixed, unless a developer really wanted to do that. But that's my personal standpoint. I'd be curious to see what Arash, what you've been seeing in the marketplace. So we've been dealing with a lot of developers of all sorts, and you see lots of different opinions. So maybe I'll kick it over to you to see what yours is on single axis.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Dave. I was actually thinking that this might have been one of the topics that you and I had a bit of a different opinion. I'm happy to hear that you were singing a lot of the same things that I was thinking as Vishal was asking the question. The reality is that I can't agree with you anymore with regards to the O&M side. I don't think that's been fully thought out in a northern environment. Fundamentally, I don't like the idea of things that move in -30, -40. That's just asking for trouble. Moving parts and cold temperatures don't typically go hand in hand. So that's one concern. Another really major concern that I've seen, and as I mentioned, we at PRI, we've worked with a number of racking companies, and I definitely don't want to discredit any of them. There's a lot of good racking companies out there, but one thing I've seen on the single axis tracker front that is a little bit troubling or concerning from a foundation design standpoint is that single axis trackers, for the most part, are equipped with sensors and electronics. Not sure, I don't know about anybody in the audience, but I can tell you myself, I own a 2019 truck, and any issues I have are typically electronic and sensor related. Electronics and sensors are prone to fail. Sorry, electrical engineers in the room, but that's just my opinion on that topic. And when those sensors and electronics fail, you need to consider that in your design, and that's not being considered at all. A lot of these systems have sensors that if the wind speed goes over X kilometers an hour or X miles an hour, the tracker puts itself in the safe zone, goes flat. And then there's other sensors in there that kind of do a bunch of algorithms, collect data, do algorithms to determine if it's expecting it to snow. And when you hit a bunch of check boxes and it says yes, 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 it'll put the tracker quite often will put itself in the vertical position to safeguard it from snow. We talked a little bit already about the prairies. The prairies are high winds and high snow. And yeah, a lot of the times when you have high wind, you're but it doesn't mean you're not going to get accumulation. So, I've always asked the question, what happens when we get if we get accumulation of snow and your tracker's gone into flat mode? What happens when those sensors fail? What happens if one of your sensors kicks the bucket and it stays flat and then you're expecting a foot of snow? Well, all of your, a lot of members in that racking system are probably going to fail. So, when you're designing the foundation, or you're doing that electrical generation model, I don't feel like that factor is being thought out. Now, that's not to say everybody's doing this. I will be honest with you. Like, I've seen quite a few racking companies where they have considered worst case scenario, and I've seen other single axis tracker racking companies that to some degree are, I would say, brushing it under the rug. And that's something that really needs to be looked at from the developer level. You need to be adamant that things are being presented to you in a worst case scenario. And if they're not being presented to you in a worst case scenario, I want you to ask, the series of questions that I just asked and say, what are you doing about this? What are we doing to make sure that when that sensor fails and it's horizontal, and we got a foot of snow coming, how are you going to ensure that all the beams in that racking system aren't going to buckle and fail? That's something that really, really, really needs to be looked at closely, because there's a lot of benefits on the generation side, which David outlined, but you wipe out 2-3 weeks of production and all your benefits have gone out the window.
Right. Yeah, no, I really appreciate your perspective on that, and I think to your point, I think this market is going to evolve, and there's going to be a place for both solutions. But for now, we're standing by and watching and learning from others right now on what not to do. But yeah, it's super interesting points from both of you about that, and two different lenses on that issue. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the audience. It is 2:50, so it gives us about 10 minutes. And if people are up for it, I'm definitely up to spend a few extra minutes. If you guys have questions or another discussion topic, or would like to give some feedback on something that we've already discussed here, would welcome anyone from the audience to chime in and give us their thoughts or questions at this point. And don't all go at once, please. Well, I think we've given people a lot of food for thought, and they're probably digesting a lot of what some of the information we've said. So if you guys do have questions or topics that you'd like to discuss from today's discussion, or other projects you'd like to discuss, we're obviously available, at Polar, at PRI, at AltaPro to answer your questions and work through your projects with you and support the development. You have our contact information here. We will make this webinar available for you. It has been recorded, and we'll send out the recording to all of you that attended today in case you want to catch up on parts of the discussion, or if you want to get in touch with any of us. So our contact numbers and emails are here. Thank you, Arash. Thank you, David. Really appreciate your time and your insight. I thought it was a wonderful discussion, and I'm looking forward to building. I'm getting some text messages from people that were on. So thank you for the feedback, Red and others. Thank you guys so much for joining today. It was really great. Actually exceeded my expectations in terms of the quality of the discussion. So we're really happy about this, and hope we can do this some more, as we continue to build more and more projects together.
For sure, yeah. I know from AltaPro's end and myself, appreciate the opportunity. It really is an exciting time in Western Canada for solar and the whole renewable industry, and there's a lot of new products that come down the pipe, and it is nice to have like-minded folks who are all in it together. Really, we're all plugged into the same cause on this, and it is exciting, and there's a huge wave coming to Western Canada, and very good future I'm looking forward to.
Same. All right.
Want to definitely echo what David's saying and Vishal's been saying. It's there's no stopping the momentum of this industry. The renewable energy industry is here, and it's definitely got a place in the Canadian energy market, and it's extremely exciting to be in the mix.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, with that, I'll leave you guys. Thank you very much. We kept it to an hour, which is great. And it's Friday afternoon, so hopefully everyone gets to enjoy their weekend now, and we'll hit it hard again next week.